Welcome back to Business Deals and Real Talk with the Choes. I'm Hollie Choes, business broker, real estate professional, and certified exit planning advisor.
And I'm Johnathan, entrepreneur, dealer, also Holly Burger. Each week we break down what it really takes to buy, sell, and grow businesses the right way.
Yes, we do, Jonathan. And today we're diving into a part of the video that doesn't always get the spotlight, but is absolutely essential. So to a successful business sale, which is escrow.
That's right. When you're selling or buying a business, escrow is what keeps the deal secure, fair, and compliant, especially here in California, where the process is unique.
Yeah, so joining us today is Sophie Wong. She's from Standard Escrow. She's a true expert who has guided countless business transactions to smooth closing. So, Sophie, welcome to the show.
Hello, Jonathan and Holly. I'm very excited to be here. Thanks for the invitation.
Absolutely. Sophie, for those who are not familiar, can you start by telling us a little bit about your background and your role at Standard Escrow?
So my name is Sophie Wong. I have been working in escrow industry for about 12 years so far. I started as escrow assistant, then become escrow officer. And until about 2 years ago, I started my own company, Standard Escrow. We currently have two branches, one in Irvine for Orange County, one in San Diamond Bar for LA County. So when I was as escrow officer, I mostly work on transactions. I was in front of my computer all day. But now my role has changed. So I do trainings to my employee, to my team members. I also give training to our clients, agents, and brokers, and sometimes seller and buyers. And I also do the management of our company to make sure all transactions are going smoothly and our clients' funds are taken care in the right way.
I love that, Sophie. So now for our listeners who might assume escrow is just for real estate, can you explain what makes business escrow different?
So escrow's role is as a neutral third party in between seller and buyers. The same for real estate transaction and for business transaction, because seller and buyers are on different perspective. It comes to a transaction. So when they need escrow because they want someone in the middle to finish the deal and not to just be leaned towards to one more than the other. So that's the basic rule about escrow holder. The difference between real estate and the business is real estate escrow has more standard timeline, and the people involved in real estate follows the timeline a little better than business because the house, their seller, buyer, HOA, or lenders, they'll move forward pretty easy because house is a house. Even though it has different HOA, but it's pretty standard. But for business, it's quite different. First of all, there are many different types of business. There are restaurants, hotels, cinemas, gas station. Each type of a business, it has its own requirements to run and operate the business. And also, there is a standard procedure, but it's very broad. It's not very detailed. So for business escrow, we have to know the type of business a little bit and also know who are we talking to and what is required for that business to become the buyers to be licensed for it. So that's why for business transaction, it requires a way more experience and knowledge and also interpersonal skills for business escrow. For real estate escrow, sometimes it's often to finish like within 30 days, but for business transaction, it often takes longer than that.
Yeah, and on the business side, so many things are negotiable and non-standard as you mentioned. The last few times that Holly and I sold a house, we didn't carry the note. So there's seller notes, there's different requirements that's pretty specific to the deal itself, right? That you as the neutral third party have to make sure that all of those details and interests as outlined get executed. So if real estate is standard of ease and complexity of 1, I think I would say that what we put you through on business sales is more like an 8 or a 9. So thank you for that explanation. So I know that I just said that it wasn't typical, but can you walk us through what a typical escrow process looks like when someone sells a business in California?
Sure, I can start maybe with example. For example, let's use a simple one, boba shop being sold. When we open escrow, we want to have a signed purchase agreement, and then we open escrow right away. We will review the purchase agreement, draw the escrow instruction, and send the open package to seller and the buyer separately for them to sign. The escrow instruction is the same for both parties to sign, but there are some forms. Some form requires the seller only, some requires the buyer only. So during the escrow process, there are 3 main sections that escrow needs to work on. Number 1 is following the California code. We have to do a local newspaper publication that has to be out for 12 business days. That is to cover the unsecured creditors out there. So in case the boba shop has a supplier vendors to provide material or inventory for the business, if they have invoices that have unpaid, they can send the invoice to escrow and get paid. The second section is to do a lien search of the business and the seller in the level of state and also the county where the business is located. So this search will find out if there is any UCC filings and judgment and county tax liens associated with the seller's name and the business name. This is to cover the secured creditors out there. And the section 3 is in California, there are 3 main tax agencies that we have to get tax clearance from. One is Franchise Tax Board, and second is EDD. Third is the BDTFA, which is the sales tax. So for all business, we need to contact the FTE. And for business has employees on payroll, we need to contact the EDD. For business that has seller's permit, where they do retail and get the sales tax from the clients, then they have the CDTFA sales permit we need to get the tax clearance from. So these are the 3 sections that escrow definitely needs to work on. Besides these 3, if there are other contingencies like getting a lease, new lease or lease transfer on the buyer side, if there is SBA loan, and if there is a franchise involved. For example, we're talking about the boba shop. So a boba shop requires the premises lease. So the buyer needs to apply, get the lease. Once it's lease done, then we can move forward. And for boba shop, normally it's a smaller transaction. There's no SBA loan. But if the boba shop is a franchise business, then we need to get the franchisor approval. The buyer needs to finish the requirements from the franchisor, get the training done and the application fee, get the franchise agreement signed. So once all those things are finished, we would require the buyer to put the final funds in escrow, and we have both seller and buyer to finish signing all necessary paperwork. Once we have all funds and all the paperwork are signed, then we pick a day, we close escrow.
And then just to expand, can you talk a little bit about when there's a seller's note, how the services that you offer in collecting and dispersing those funds?
Sure. If there is a seller carryback, we can help to draw the note and calculate the amortization schedule and prepare the security agreement. And after it's closed, we can file a UCC against the buyer and the business to secure this note. The note we draw is based on their agreed terms and rate. Normally, for seller carryback, they would agree a few years, and the interest rate is up to them if there is any late fee. After close of the escrow, well, the interest starting date is normally starting from the possession date of the business, unlike the mortgage normally starting the first day. And the first payment would be after the first month after close of the escrow. After closing, the buyer will just pay the seller monthly payment based on the instruction seller gave out. We normally do not get involved on collecting the payment and give to the seller after closing because they can just do it on their own. They don't have to go through escrow unless they really require to. And after it's paid off, we can help them to do a UCC termination to release that UCC lien from the buyer side after, maybe a few years after it's done. If it's done earlier, then we can help as long as the seller confirm that has been paid off, then we can also help on relieve the UCC termination.
That's a great service that you offer, Sophie. I know it's very beneficial to our sellers, especially when both sellers and buyers, when there's a note involved. So just curious, from your experience, what are the common mistakes that you see sellers and buyers make during escrow?
Okay, you may be surprised. We often see that the seller name is not the correct seller name. Yeah. How do we find out? For example, John, you're the seller and you want to sell, let's say, the boba shop, and you signed the escrow paperwork already, and you gave us the tax ID numbers when we asked you. And when we request the tax cert, and we found out the tax ID is under your LLC name. So very often, the business is run by LLC, but the seller thinks his individual is the LLC. And always, they sometimes just give their individual name to our broker. And broker use that name to prepare the purchase agreement, and they sign that way. And we don't find out until when we do all the processing, we found out, oh, there is a LLC. So that's one. Second is sometimes we have seller mix up the names and addresses, and sometimes the seller and buyer are not very cooperating in doing the transaction. So that all adds up the delays in closing.
Sophie, what are the key documents or information that you as an escrow officer need typically to get things started?
When we open escrow, we pretty much just need the basic information, the seller name and info, the buyer name and info, and the info about the business. So if you don't have a purchase agreement ready, those are the three main things we need. But often, for a formal escrow, we will need a signed purchaser agreement and any disclosures that associate with that transaction, send it to us. Then we can open escrow and contact the buyer for making the deposit. And also we review the purchase agreement to work on the escrow paperwork. There will be more information needed, but we will add in those forms to seller and buyer separately. So they just need to follow our open package to provide the additional information.
No, those are great points. And this is a question that I think is helpful for brokers as well when we're helping our client is what about the timeline? Like on average, how long does escrow take for a business transaction?
That's a great question. For simple business escrow, it takes about 1 to 2 months to close. But for business escrow, as we talked about earlier, there are too much complications for each different transaction. So if we add more conditions and variables, it can sometimes take even 6 months to close. So for a simple business like a boba shop we're talking about, the most important contingency is probably the landlord lease. So some landlords react fast, some landlords react very slow. So if the landlord take their sweet time, they can drag for maybe a couple months to close. But otherwise, if the landlord can finish, we can really close escrow in a month. When it comes to SBA loan involved, that will add additional 2 to 3 months to the transaction. And if there is liquor license involved, that will add maybe, I would say at least 3 to 4 months to the transaction. So depending, that transaction, what the contingencies are, it very varies. For example, if it's a gas station, for a gas station, it must be a concurrent closing of the business and the real estate together, because a gas station is not just a business, it's also, they're using the land. So very often gas station, the owner owns the business and also owns the land. Sometimes they use two different entities to hold the assets and the real estate separately. So that's why the two escrow has to close concurrently. And often that type of transaction, for example, the gas station, we always have a little mini mart on top, right? And they often sell liquor, so there's a liquor license involved. And the gas station is pretty expensive. There's always SBA loan involved. And then, gas station is not an individual owned. It's not like an individual can run it. There's always a franchisor in the background, like for example, Shell or Mobil. There's always franchisor, and the franchisor sometimes will put additional lien on the property. So that gas station transaction would be very difficult. I think at least will take 6 months to close.
Yeah, talking about some other things that add to the timeline, can you talk a little bit about the bulk sale process? This is something that is rather unique in California, but super important to close a deal.
So for asset sale in California, the Uniform Commercial Code required this publication on the local newspaper to go out for at least 12 days. This is to let the unsecured creditors out there to know this business is on sale. So if you have unpaid invoice or balance, make sure you file it with the escrow before the bulk sale ending date, which is the 12-day finish. This is really required for retail business because they have inventory. For example, restaurants, liquor store, they have to buy the produce from those produce vendors, and the liquor store, they have to buy the liquor from the liquor suppliers. And they sometimes do have like a weekly or monthly delivery. So this procedure is trying to protect the vendors to get paid, but also in a way, it gives a time limitation to those vendors. So in case they don't file on time, it's not the sellers or buyers' fault. They did not notify them. So for those vendors, they actually have a newspaper they order and they pay a price. That newspaper lists out all the notice to creditors of this business being sold. So they receive that newspaper and they check if any of their clients' business is being sold so that they can make sure to send the invoice. So for service business, sometimes the seller and the buyer do not want to disclose the information and they want to waive it. So as long as they sign a waiver, we can okay visit. But if it's a retail business, they want to waive it. We normally try to recommend not to do that because it may leave some problem for the buyer later on. What if there is something that's not paid and we close escrow and comes back, and if the seller doesn't want to pay and the buyer still needs to run the business. So for asset sale, normally this is a requirement, but sometimes it's a service business. It becomes a stock sale. For stock sale, it's often get waived, but when there's an SBA loan involved, we have to double check with the SBA lender if they're okay to waive it or not. So this is going out there for 12 business days, including the weekend and also the processing time. It may take about like 3 weeks.
Sophie, I love how you use the word protection because that's really what you do
Right.
at Escrow, right? Can you touch on how Escrow helps maintain confidentiality during the business sale, which is another form of protection that you guys provide?
Sure. As escrow, we are neutral third party between seller and the buyer, and we don't lean to one party more than the other. So we're very careful with getting the information from the seller. If it's not something put on the purchase agreement, we would not just voluntarily disclose to the other party. If the other party is asking for it, we would always ask for authorization. So that's protecting their own individual information. And of course, we do not release those information out to the public. So our last question was talking about the publication. So if the business is being sold and we put in the publication is being sold, then that's public information. It's already out there. But we will not go to someone and to disclose the information. And another thing is we are DFPI regulated. We follow the escrow regulations. We protect our clients. So in our office, we have extra protection for the internet, for our software, and for our computer we're using. We're trying to protect our clients' information and money, not just from the public, but also from the cyber fraud out there.
And Sophie, just quickly, I know you touched on inventory earlier. So for those inventory asset and heavy business, when should they have their final inventory count submitted to escrow?
So for inventory, it also depends on what type of business it is. For example, if the business runs really depending on the inventory, like liquor store, normally the inventory in the beginning of the transaction, we're just getting estimate amount. For a liquor store transaction, it's common that the inventory is in addition to the purchase price. So for purchase price, we have allocation. We have furniture, fixture, equipment. That's the tangible asset you can see once you enter the business. Second is goodwill of the business. And the number 3 is covenant not to compete. And then sometimes trade name, and sometimes there is license, any like for example liquor license or any other special license. For liquor store, it's 100% based on the inventory sale. The liquor store, the inventory is always in addition to the purchase price. For example, we value the business as 100K. We always 100K plus inventory as the total purchase price. And in the beginning, we can know the approximate inventory amount. Let's say it's like a 20,000 as inventory. And at the closing, normally the inventory count is the day before the possession, the night before the possession, or in the morning of the possession date. They would hire a third-party inventory counting company come to do the inventory count and comes to an final agreed inventory amount. And normally before we were doing the closing, we would have an estimate amount to collect enough money from the buyer side to cover the closing. But if the inventory count comes out to be more than that, so the seller and the buyer can agree with the additional or not. If they agree with the additional, the buyer can put more money in. If the buyer does not agree with the additional, the seller can keep the extra inventory or return the inventory back. So that is if it's 100% the inventory. But for like a small restaurant, they have the inventory, but sometimes not that much. So they would agree with seller shall maintain an inventory for like 10,000 that level for at the close of the escrow. So even though the final inventory may be more or less, as long as the seller and buyer are okay with allocating the inventory to that amount, so we can just close like that. Because the seller can control not to have too much inventory at closing, because the buyer may take over to run the business right away, or the buyer may take over and wants to do a remodel for like a couple of weeks, then reopen. Then the seller wants to keep the inventory low just to maintain the business ongoing.
Got it. Essentially, they should submit that an inventory count the night before or the day of closing.
Right. So for business, really depending on the inventory. So we often, for a liquor store, we sometimes get the inventory down in the morning, and we get in the middle of the day the figure, and then we close by end of the day kind of thing.
For the business brokers and mergers and acquisitions advisors in our audience, how can we best support you and make the escrow process smooth for our clients?
Thank you for asking. Actually, I want to say we support each other because it's for one deal, it requires a lot of people working together to finish it, right? It's not just the seller and buyer. We need a broker, we need escrow, we need the landlord to cooperate and franchisor. And very often we have to involve with the government agencies and the SBA lender to finish the transaction. So we're on the same boat. We help each other, including the seller and the buyer, right? So I would say right after you get the listing, or even before you get the listing, you can call us and to discuss, your concerns, your questions with us, and the seller's concerns with us to see if there's something we can help each other to solve those questions for ours. And before opening escrow, whenever there are questions, you can always call us to discuss. Even though we're not brokers, but we have done so many transactions, we haven't seen so many things happen on so many transactions. So we can always discuss to find a good solution for our clients, especially for our seller. It's a very emotional process for seller to let go of the business, because sometimes the seller start the business from scratch. It's their baby, right? So it's very emotional to see let go. So as escrow, we learn to have an interpersonal skill to listen and to know what the question they're asking, and try to know what their real concern, and try to help them to solve the problem.
Thank you for that, Sophie, because that is such a great point. It is a very emotional process, and it's really helpful to have someone there that understands that and also attends to their emotional needs. So that was a lot of great advice. So I guess before we wrap up, I want to know, so what's your best tip for first-time sellers going through escrow?
Like we talked about the mistakes earlier, One is, I think that the seller wants to keep the business separate from their individual. They want to keep the business operation organized. Sometimes when buyer buy, they're using their individual names, but it's recommended they set up LLC. They use the business address for getting all the business emails and to put that address on the Secretary of State filing as the business operation address. If they don't want to use the business address, they can just get PO box to receive all the mailings, just to keep it separate from their individual home and just to keep organized. That's one way, because when we do the transaction, we often see seller has mixed use of their home address, business address for the business operation. Because once we see the home address is being used, we have to do the search for the home as well. And sometimes we see, the home address finding is found during the link search. So that's hopefully our seller, be organized with the business operation. Another thing is to sell the business for a good price and also find a decent buyer smoothly. I would say, definitely find a good business broker, because a good business broker will understand the business and also have a good evaluation about the business price. When I say a good evaluation, it's not necessarily mean it's a very high amount, because the business value very depending the business operation and its revenue, correct? So a good business broker will know how much you can sell for this business and also filter out the not good buyers and have this transaction to close smoothly. Sometimes, some buyer come in, but you don't accept that all the offers come from the buyer, because we have to have a strong buyer. We don't want to open escrow with one buyer and this buyer cannot close, then we have to cancel. That's something we want to avoid, because it's like a roller coaster.
All right, let's have some fun. This is new, but we'll do a rapid fire round. Try to answer these questions. Have fun with it. What's the biggest escrow myth you hear?
Some people think escrow can do everything. We cannot draw up the purchase agreement. So sometimes we have sell by owner clients asking us to draw the purchase agreement. We have to let them know, no, that's not our territory. We have to stay out from the purchase agreement.
All right, one thing that always delays or oftentimes delays closing.
We don't get the open package back soon enough. We send out the seller package, the buyer package, but we don't hear them back until, we're ready to close. That gave us a hard time.
Lack of foresight and preparation. Yeah. All right, what's the most satisfying part of your job?
We help clients solve problems. And even though during the process, we sometimes get a lot of emotional kickbacks from our clients, but towards to the end, when it's finished, they appreciate what we do, being patient, help them hand by hand to finish this transaction. So that's very satisfying. And also, one thing we see is we always get referrals from our clients. I think that's because we're doing an okay job. So that's why our clients like to introduce us to their friends or coworkers and they come back. I think that satisfies us. So every day we're very busy. I think we're doing something good to help our people to get what they need.
Okay, last one. The closing week can be all hands on deck, kind of crazy. Coffee or tea during closing week?
Oh, coffee every day. And sometimes, and we need a lot of sugar. When there's very stressed, we need a lot of sugar. So we always have some snacks or goodies in the office for our escrow officers.
I love that, Sophie. This has been such an insightful conversation. We do appreciate you and thank you so much for breaking down the escrow process and just sharing your wisdom with us.
No, I'm very honored to be with you, Hollie and Johnathan, and I really appreciate your invitation to this podcast. Anytime you have a question or your clients have a question, please feel free to reach out to me. Thank you.
We've only touched lightly on the complexities to get a business sale done. And don't be scared, but it does sometimes get worse. Sometimes several emergencies to solve. So one of the things that Sophie and her team do a great job of doing is making this complex process for you smooth and easy. They've done it hundreds of times and they're experts at it. So we recommend Sophie and her team. Thank you, Sophie.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank
So
you.
Sophie,
Thank you.
so when people are thinking of selling your business in California, having a great escrow officer like you is essential. How they can get a hold of you at Standard Escrow?
We have our website, standardescrow.com. Right now, we're doing maintenance because we're trying to restructure the website and also try to put more information about the escrow processing on it. That's one way to find us. And we also are trying to do our Instagram, do more social media. So if you Google us, you'll definitely find us.
Perfect. Thank you again. Is there a phone number they can call you to?
Yes, my personal work phone number is 949-796-2166. Please feel free to call or text anytime.
Thank you again for joining us. It's been very delightful, Sophie. So thanks again for tuning into Business Deals and Real Talk with the Choes. Don't forget to subscribe, share this episode with anyone thinking about selling their business.
And until next time, feel free to give us a call if we could add value, answer any questions. If you're even looking towards the future, it's always better to plan a few years before you want to sell, to prepare your business to sell so that it is ready to sell when you're ready to sell. Thanks again. See you next time.
Thank you.